One would wonder, why are we talking about that when it is raining, flooding? Well, it never does stop. The Principal Secretary in the State Department for Irrigation in the Ministry of Water, Sanitation and Irrigation is our guest this hour. Our guest host this morning is Mark Bichachi, just pushing conversations with us as we continue this morning. All right. CPA Ifantes Kimotho is the Permanent Secretary in the State Department and is here with us this morning. PS, good morning.
Morning.
Karibu sana.
Today.
Well, thank you for being here. Many conversations that we'll have, and as we wrap around that today, Principal Secretary, as we wrap around that today, we will get into our proverb. CT goes around the continent and picks up proverbs from different countries. This week, he is in he's in the Republic of Congo.
Yes. Not be confused with the Democratic Republic of Congo, otherwise known as DRC. This is Congo Brazzaville. Yes, to distinguish the two. It's like you have Sudan, Southern Sudan, and you have Sudan Khartoum, so you know which Sudan you're speaking of. The proverb: a boat of pity will never cross the water.
PS, what do you think about this?
Thanks for that. But I'm not very good in proverbs, but I'll give it a try.
Thank you.
It means you can't make it if you're not confident of yourself.
You've explained it well and simple.
Yep.
Yes. Because when someone wallows in pity, what does it tell you about them? Something has happened, yes. You could move along, but you've decided to stay in one spot, pitying yourself. There's no movement there.
True.
Yes.
Indeed. Okay, well, moving on a boat of water, moving along water issues, irrigation, right in front of center, right, in the middle of that. Let's start off with understanding what this particular department is meant to do. What is the mandate of your department? Yes, even as we look at irrigation and delivering for this country.
Yeah, thank you for that. Maybe I'll start by just saying why the particular mandate, just before I dive into the mandate. As you all know, we've had a lot of effects of climate change because of climate change, and that has affected the rain-fed agriculture. So it's no longer sustainable. And as a result of that, irrigation now becomes the way forward to actually look into matters food security. Coming back to the mandate, our mandate as a State Department of Irrigation is to increase the area under irrigation. Currently, using just the normal runway, surface water, we have a potential of irrigating around 1.9 million acres. But using the dams, we have a potential of irrigating 3 million. So our mandate actually is to increase the area under irrigation. We have a target of putting, currently the area under irrigation is 694,000. We have a target of increasing that to 1.2 million acres. So that's the first mandate. The second mandate is actually to impound water, store water, harvest and store water for the same purpose of irrigation. Irrigation is a big consumer of water. Actually, in any particular dam, you find irrigation consumes around 87% of the water. So for us to have sustainable agriculture, we need to dam water and store water. So that's our second mandate. The third mandate is actually to do production, particularly on rice. We recognize at least almost 90% of the rice that we consume is actually under irrigated, mostly from our schemes. So I'll say the main mandate of the State Department is those three that I've just mentioned.
Okay. Now, how do we see that this is playing a role specifically? And if you look around the country, and a lot of rain-fed agriculture is what has been dependent on, isn't it?
Yeah, sure.
How do we see that irrigation, from a policy point of view and also then implementation, will then ensure that agriculture, no matter what, we're talking about whether there is rain or not, whether there are lower levels of rain or not, that agriculture then will continue to receive what it needs to be able to now give yields in the country. What would be needed for that to happen?
For us to continue in production, the main thing, despite the drought and everything, we need to be a little bit resilient. And to be resilient, what we need to do, we need to invest a lot in storage. Like now when it's raining, we've done quite a number of water pans, which will be very helpful 6 months after the rains. Remember also sometimes 2 years ago, we suffered some droughts and we lost a lot of livestock. To avert such things, that's why we find the issue of coming up with water pans, fodder, and the likes. That's what actually will actually save. So, and that is actually done through irrigation. Yeah.
Well, P.S., you talked about increasing the amount of land that is under irrigation from around 700,000 to 1.2 million. In how long is this supposed to happen, and also in which areas? Because I'm quite curious about how we are reclaiming the northern parts of our country, because there's a lot of potential there.
Yeah, yeah. So we intend to do that by 2027. This year alone, let's say not this year, last year alone, we were able to put an additional 47,933 acres under irrigation. This particular year, our target is to actually put 60,000 under irrigation. And so far, as we talk, 2 weeks ago, we had Loanzoia, which cuts across Busia and Siaya, water flowing. It has been a project that has been there from 2018. So that alone will give us 10,000. This year alone also, early in the year, we commissioned His Excellency the President commissioned Meru Moja in Meru, which is around 500 acres. Earlier we had done Kaigonchi, 1,500. In short, the community projects we've done so far, we've done over 5,000 acres. Then the Loanzoia. So far, I can say we're on track because we already have 15,000 acres, which has already been put under irrigation.
In every time I talk to someone in government, and whichever docket they're in, and we ask them what it is the government has done, I'm really fascinated at just how much gets done, and yet we have absolutely no idea that it's being done. Well, it's a story that we in the media keep saying, why doesn't the government talk more about what it is doing so that people actually know? But let me ask this question. When you talk about surface water being sufficient to achieve a certain amount of progress, the question I ask is, have we actually set in motion processes that would optimize water? Like now, there's so much water, they say water everywhere, isn't it?
Yeah, sure too.
Do we have a process, a plan, a strategy that when we have an abundance of water like now, yes, you have water pans, you have some dams, I'd just like to know what the plan is, what the strategy is, and how it is we plan to increase all such facilities so that when we have rain like this, as you say correctly, forget 6 months, 8 months down the line, we'll still be benefiting from it. So that when we have the next cycle of rain, it actually finds that we don't go into that period like the 3-year drought period that we went through.
Okay. So actually, you're right. We actually in the process of mapping up the country, and we are coming with an irrigation master plan for each basin, and that will determine the method of water security you're going to use. An example in the northern eastern, where we may not have quite a number of rivers, but when it rains, we have a lot of laggers. During the last season of the El Nino, we were able to, actually we received the highest amount of water in some of the areas. Like in Tana River, the gauge that is in Garissa was actually at 7 gauge, meaning the river flow was actually 7 meters from the ground up. It was the highest ever since independence. So, but along there, we were actually able to, this is what is called laggers. Laggers, this is where you have, when rain flows, when it rains, after the rain, there's a lot of water that flows. That's what we normally call laggers.
Yeah.
The laggers, we have like 63 laggers, very huge laggers. These are like huge rivers, temporary rivers. We have like 63 of them. So during El Nino, what we did, we actually mapped up 63 of them, which has a potential of impounding 480 million liters. So with that, what we've done, in each and every ward or where there is a lager, we actually have mapped out an area. Now, after knowing the amount of water, we've gone another step now further and map out where we can do a potential water pan. And this time round, we are doing very huge water pans which are going to be 750,000 cubic, as opposed to before when we were doing small water pans of around 100,000 cubic, which will only sustain you for around 3-4 months. But now the 1 million cubic water, big, actually they're like small dams. Those ones can sustain you for a period of almost 1 year. And over and above that, what you're doing, you're also identifying an area, because in those northern eastern areas, you have a lot of piece of land. You're identifying an area whereby you can do fodder, irrigated fodder. So that, with irrigated fodder and the storage, that will enhance and the issue of drought going forward. So that's now on the northern part of it. On other areas where we have, where I said where we have service flow, that's where now we are focusing more on irrigation. Places like what I just said, Loanzoia. Loanzoia, we have a lot of water flowing we tap it before it gets to Lake Victoria. Then when we talk about Mombasa, we have Mwache Dam, which will be complete in the next 2 years. Mwache Dam actually will help us impound over 124 million cubic liters. So we'll be tapping water just before it gets to Indian Ocean. Mwache Dam is in Kwale County. So those are some of the plans that are there. We also have Uma Dam in Kitui. Those are the dams which are now ongoing. Like Mwache Dam should be complete by 2026. It's already ongoing. Then we have Soinkor in West Pokot. We have Soimurunyi in West Pokot. So those are some of the plans which are there.
Okay. So are we saying essentially that with these plans in place, or let's even look at before the plans, that there would be policy whereby it goes towards implementation, whereby around the country, places whereby we would depend on to be able to deliver produce in terms of agriculture, that can actually be water fed throughout the year as a result of these projects that are being put in place. So essentially what we're saying is that with these, there will not be a time whereby yields will suffer or crop will be low because of lack of water.
Yeah, actually, in essence, that's what you're saying. We are saying like even the northern eastern part, with those dams, we'll have consistent food security because of those plants. Like for example, also in Radat, we have a dam. In Baringo, we have a dam called Radat, which will help us impound around 124 million cubic and help us put to production around 24,000 acres. When we go to a place like Turkana, again, where we also have a huge challenge, we have a dam called Lowat Dam, which again will also help us impound around 324 million cubic. So with that, with the implementation of those dams, it's as you've rightly put it, we'll be able to sustainably and reduce our imports drastically in this particular country.
Well, P.S., I have a question. Talking about Western Kenya and Nyanza and the likes, the Ethiopian Renaissance Dam has had issues with Egypt, and we know there's a treaty going back to the 1920s about Egypt and things like that. How are you handling that particular area, given that is still the breadbasket of Kenya?
Yeah, so I think when you talk about, I think the one you're talking about in Ethiopia had actually, that's a transboundary. It has an issue of transboundary. But the one for Western doesn't have those effects. Like the name I've just talked about, Loanzoia. Loanzoia has a lot of flow that even at times it becomes a havoc. We have to use dikes to actually control. That's the same one that goes all the way to places like Budalangi. So with what we are doing, actually, we're even trying to control. We also, in the process, we're also doing flood mitigation and such like. At the same time, we are trying to stop a havoc. At the same time, we're also trying to create food security for the area.
But please talk a little bit about containing and averting the havoc. What is it that is done? For instance, what causes flooding? I know there's a lot of water from a layman's point of view, but is it something that can be averted? Is it something that can be contained?
Yeah, so flooding is an overflow.
Yes, it is an overflow.
Yeah, and that overflow, one way to manage it is through dikes, and the other way to manage it is through storage, which are some of the issues you're saying. Actually, you'll realize when you dam water, you actually control flooding, because what you do when you come up with a dam, like for example, Tana River, which actually normally has a very huge impact whenever it rains. When we dam high ground fall, in essence, what we'll do, we'll have control. High ground fall is 5.6 million cubic. When you dam it, you actually control the river flow. And actually, the other alternative of that, the advantage of damming is that also you prolong the period of the flow of water over time.
You know, there's if you fly towards Lamu during the rainy season, you are met with a very interesting spectacle. That is the Tana River, even as it weaves its way into the Indian Ocean, because you see this brown, sinewy snake-like movement. Okay. And then as you get towards the ocean, the place where now the river gets into the ocean, it's brown.
Right.
Okay. It's actually a bit puzzling to the mind. We realize, it's the river that has gone into. Now, how useful is dredging of rivers? And I'm going to explain to you why this concerns me. I come from the Kano Plains, okay, in Luo Nyanza. And there's a river called River Nyando. Songs have been sung about it.
Yeah.
Now, when it floods, water enters the house. As a child, I remember waking up to a floating sensation. It wasn't a floating sensation. We used to sleep on a reed mat. That was what we slept on, not a mattress. So when water entered, the reed mat, the bed, was actually floating. Yes, okay? So I'm simply saying, when you consider flooding, you're considering water that could have been put to use. And I want to understand what dredging then does and how useful it can be in situations like this to help augment the dam, the damming that you mentioned.
Yeah. So you're right. You're right. Some of the things that can be done is also to do is the activities to do upstream.
Yes.
So and those are some of the issues we're also looking at. You need to invest a lot in the upstream. Because when you invest a lot in the upstream, also we also reduce the siltation, which you find the guy is saying by the time water is getting to the ocean is brown water. It has carried a lot of soil erosion.
A lot of topsoil has
been
taken. Yes.
But if we invest a lot in conservation, that's why we have to work closely also with the Ministry of Environment and Forestry, so also to also invest in the upstream. Because for us, when you do irrigation, actually we are an abstractor. We are actually abstracting water. But for us to ensure the water is clean, we need, and also to avoid the soil erosion, we need to do a lot of land reclamation. That's why we find even in our department, you also have a small unit of land reclamation, which also works closely with the Environmental State Department and Environment State Department and Forestry to invest in the upstream part. A good example is at the river, whereby we now have Nairobi River Commission. Nairobi River Commission will also be working, because right now in the river we're tapping a lot of water, like Thwake, we're also tapping from it. But you find by the time water is getting to Thwake, it's not very clean. So, but now when we invest in Nairobi River Commission, we'll be able to, some of those interventions. Like now we intend to, under Nairobi River Commission, we are to do bamboo trees, along which actually are very good in cleaning and at the same time conservation. So there must be both efforts. We must have conservation efforts, consistent and focused conservation efforts along our rivers at the same time, and that also helps us also in recharging. Because the minute that also helps a lot in recharging, at the same time the cleaning of the water. So there must be concerted efforts, and that's why you have to have a one government approach when you're looking at all these things. Yeah.
Before we go to the break, I just want to ask, so the one government approach to, I just want to take the example of Nairobi River, for example. For as long as I can remember, Nairobi River has, I don't even know that we can call it a river, because it has so many other things in it apart from water. There have been many projects to see the cleaning of the river, for example. It flows into and flows out of many other tributaries and other streams that come in, and is a major source that then goes and connects with others, whereby we're saying that this can also be a form that can be used. how do we say that all of these things will come together if, like, one project, for example, for making sure the river is clean from end to end cannot happen? There's so many things. People are throwing garbage into the river. And it's very important when we still look at irrigation at the end of it, of what can happen. People are throwing garbage in. It's not maintained. It is... private organizations sometimes want to step in and see how they can work on it. Government has tried, but that has been a major source of water for many things. We just can't seem to get that and keep it tight. How do we then have this one approach if there seems to be a kink in this chain all the time?